come in for this session. I'm Anindya, I'm representing CIFF here. I think Voices as a track is very close to me and one of my favorites because no matter what we do, no matter what we create, we ultimately must remember who we are creating it for, right? So it was very important for us to go to the field, speak to the youth, teachers, parents, and understand what they think about life skills. So I don't know if this is on. Is this on?
Check.
Why we did what we did, and why was Voices this intervention important for us. Followed by Snehal, who will talk about how we did it in the field, who we spoke to, etc. And we'll end with Devleena, who will be speaking about the key insights and findings from this intervention. So may I request Pauline to please
Thank
first,
you.
would you like to stand or is there a presentation?
No. This is on. I hope I'm audible. I can clearly hear myself. Okay. So like Anindya said, I'll be talking a little bit about why we did the Voices exercise and why did we think it was important. And for us as a part of the collaborative, because life skills is something that we realized we've been talking since morning that there isn't a common vocabulary, there isn't a common understanding. Different people are using different verbiage to express it. Some soft skills, some are saying, okay. We use social emotional learning skills, etc. So again, that was one thing that drove us to do this exercise so that we understand what the environment, what the young people, their parents and the teachers were talking about when, we said or used the term life skills. How did they see it in their lives? What did they think was important? Who were they looking up to or looking towards to learn about, develop and practice these skills? So that was one of the reasons. The other is, we know that we have about 254 million adolescents in the country, and that's quite a bit of people who are, looking towards and are going to be the future of the country, and therefore for them to get a holistic, full potential experience of their own lives beyond the academic, beyond employment was another factor where we wanted to look at life skills and what does it mean to them if it were to be integrated into an education system. So what would that for them then look like besides getting better marks or being able to, get employability alone. So those were a few driving factors for us. What we also realized during this process, and we've all again been talking about the national education policy, mentions that we need to look at teaching and learning as a different, approach where life skills is a part of that. So for us also that was something that informed the way in which we were looking at what does it mean for getting these voices, where do we plug it in, if we are even going to talk to partners, whether it's policymakers, whether it's other organizations that are working on issues of life skills, what is that kind of program, what is that kind of intervention design? Looking at it from that lens as well. So being able to get insights from the people who matter, getting the voices of the young people into the foray, getting the voices of their parents as well, because if there is no buy-in from, the different members of the community, a learning environment doesn't work in isolation. So those were a few factors that drove us. Again, we did this exercise in 2 rounds, where we had round 1 that we did, where again, because of the COVID pandemic, what happened is we ended up doing only telephonic surveys. There was a survey fatigue that some of the respondents faced, and we felt like we weren't being able to get a lot of nuances through just the survey format. And where we were, for instance, asking them based on some of the definitions that we understood of different life skills terms, what did it mean for these people, and those languages and how did they see that were some things that we had started exploring. However, thankfully, because of the restricted mobility now in the second round, we had more mobility. We were able to go into the communities. We used some visual tools. And I know, I think Devleena and Snehal also are going to share a little bit about those details. Using those visual tools, using a focus group discussion format, we were able to get some more nuances. And that's also helped us understand in greater detail in terms of what and how young people are understanding life skills as, where do they think it's critical for them, and some of those aspects. So this is, in a nutshell, what was the purpose that drove us to do this voices exercise. Hand it back to you? Or? Okay. So, Snehal, back to you.
Thank you, Pauline. Do we want to move the slides, Ayush? Thanks. So, what I'll be talking about is how we actually did this. As Pauline said, there was a round one during COVID. We learned a lot from that. And what we actually ended up doing in the second round is somewhere coming up on your slide here. So in morning also we mentioned 37,000 conversations are now documented in the report that was launched today, right? Out of that, it was around 16,000 were rural youth, around 14,000 were their parents. There were about 2,400 or so school teachers and about 350 or so government ITI trainers. From round one, what we learned was whenever we do something like this and take our findings to the government always asks, is it representative? You have spoken to so many, but is it can we project it to the whole population or not, and so on and so forth. So this time around, in this round, this household survey that we have mentioned, which we have done in 11 districts in 6 states, the process was of a multi-stage random sampling. So census 2011 based 60 villages in each of those districts were selected through that method, and then within each village 24 households again through the proper random sampling method that was there. So now we can say at least in this 11 districts, whatever the findings are, we can call them as estimates at the district level also. So on that map that you see, the blue colors are those districts where these household surveys were conducted. For the school teachers, what we had done was wherever the household survey was being done in those villages, if that village had a upper primary or a higher level school, we approached, and if the teachers were available and willing, we invited 2 of the teachers, and it was a self-administered digital link that we had, so we gave it to them. And if they filled it right there and then, we were there to support also. Otherwise, they could fill later on as well. So the first household survey was an in-person kind of survey format. The school teachers was a self-administered supported format. And this time around, as Pauline was saying, in first round, it was just the 3 organizations, Pratham, Quest Alliance and Breakthrough, who tried the whole thing out. In the second round, we invited a lot more LSC partners, outside contributor organizations. So there were at least about 9 organizations participated in this second round. The other smaller map that you see showing the orange colored states, that's where the school teachers, 2,400 or so school teacher surveys are coming from. And another thing that we had tried was the government ITIs, government industrial training institutes, which represent the TVET ecosystem, technical and vocational education and training whole ecosystem itself. We had tried getting a representative sample of a state. So Tamil Nadu, where we had our presence, we wanted to create a finding at a state level representative. We fell short of 7 districts, but most of the Tamil Nadu districts, 29 districts were covered. So that also became another part of our conversation. So this report that we have launched today covers all of these findings. So this is how we went about who do we speak to and who all are involved. So there were contributor organizations, as I said. There was a whole round of, if we move on to the next slide, there was a slide around tools, or is it skipped? I'm not sure. All right, so we had, I think no, that's it. So in the tools we have been asking, this time we covered 10 skills. In the first round, we had tried 35 out of 52 skills. If you see the Life Skill Collaborative's India Life Skill Glossary, right now it has 52 skills. In the first round, we had tried to collect voices around 35 of them. This time around, we learned from the respondent fatigue and we zeroed down on the UNICEF list of 10 skills. And those were, so we developed tools around it. Then there was a translation, contextualization, training of all organizations and so on. And then during April to June this year, the main data collection happened. Then I think that the voices report is in front of you. There's also another dashboard. So the QR code that you received in your registration kit today, it will lead you to a link where you will be able to see both these things together. And in the dashboard, you will have many filters which will allow you to play with the data and come up with whatever nuanced findings that you want to arrive at. So suppose you want to find out between Ajmer and Rajsamband, which are the 2 districts in Rajasthan. You just want the 2 districts to figure instead of the whole all 11 district finding there. And then you want to cross tab and see life skill terms awareness among youth with those who had a laptop, those who knew how to operate a computer, or those who had a smartphone of their own. What is the awareness among them? What are their perceptions? And so on and so forth. So that those filters are available for organizations to play with and come up with exact kind of district-wise or profile-wise awareness levels and all that. So those are the 2 things that as a collaborative we have tried. And all our tools are in public domain. They are a public good that has been created for the whole ecosystem to use. So largely, yes, dissemination. How are we planning to disseminate all our findings? So ILSC, this India Life Skill Conference, is the first event. You saw the street play already. There are few 4 or so videos that we are creating. There will be social media campaigns around those videos. There will be a few state level events also wherever this data collection had happened. So with the government functionaries in those states, we will have more events coming up. And some articles and blogs on the LSC website. So over to Devleena now for the main highlight of what we found.
Thanks. I hope all the slides are there. That's all I was concerned about. So, okay. In year 1, as already discussed, we did a telephonic interview. And because we were still in the thick of COVID, this was a telephonic interview done by the 3 organizations who were basically doing it. Now, not very surprisingly, we found some data, but none of it was very interesting. So, Ayush, can you just... Yeah. So we learned that not many people have heard about life skills or even Kaushal when translated in Hindi. Not sure what happened. Okay, yeah. What we did find interesting was that people had different ways of articulating life skills, and so there were different interpretations of life skills as well. So this was something that we wanted to dig deeper into, and in year 2, I'm happy to say that we did find some interesting insights. So let's start there. Now, in year 2, to start again, not many people had heard about life skills. No surprises there. That is about overall 4 of every 10 youth surveyed reported having heard of the term life skills or the term 21st century skills. But as you can see, older youth who were in the age group of 19 to 22 were more likely to have heard about life skills than their younger counterparts. Similarly, youth with more years of education or more access to mobile phones or with more educated parents were also more likely to have heard about life skills. Thankfully, there was no variation by gender. The next natural question to ask is, what do you think life skills are? And so we did it in a few different ways, which also, if you were attending the previous session where Akash was speaking with these young kids, very similarly we asked them, अच्छा अगर आपको ये बनना है तो कैसे बनोगे, क्या चाहिए होगा, अच्छा do you know someone in your village who you really like, what do you like about that person, what are some of the things that you want to grow up to become, how will you do that? And even the survey data, we found that they were often referring to vocational skills or other types of everyday skills. So the survey data shows that while intangible socioeconomic skills like relationship management, Ayush, can we go to the next slide? And coping with stress are considered life skills by about 90% of youth. Tangible skills like cooking, cycling are also considered life skills by about 80% of the youth. So clearly there was some confusion about life skills, which is not surprising because before I got here, if somebody asked me what are some important essential life skills, I too would have said cooking, swimming and driving. And I think all of us are on the same page because of LSE. Now we all know a little better. So similarly, in some focus group discussions with girls, participants always confuse life skills or Jeevan Kaushal with Kaushal Rojgar Yojana or Kaushal Kishore Yojana, and that's not surprising at all because again, words are very similar. Nobody has ever gone and spoken to them about Jeevan Kaushal or life skills. Now let's unpack this a little further. If they haven't heard about life skills, does it mean that youth don't know about the concept at all? And not very surprisingly again, this was not true. In rural India, when we asked youth questions like, do you look up to someone? Or what kind of qualities would you like to have in the future? We got very interesting responses, all of which can be easily translated as life skills. So for instance, one said, I need to have concentration. Another said, I would like to have money, respect and knowledge. Another, you must be able to help your children and keep your children and your parents happy. That's most important. One more youth who wanted to become a teacher. He said, teachers should not only have bookish knowledge, but he must be able to guide students in behavioral and social aspects too. So you can all see how life skills are being articulated by these young people in a myriad of different ways. They're talking about relationship building, they're talking about focus, they're talking about stress management, they're talking about collaboration. They just have a very different way of articulating this. Now, interestingly, when we asked youth and also parents, where do they think youth can learn these life skills from? The most common response we got was a teacher followed by school books. So it seems like a thread underlying many of the responses from both youth and adults, to the extent that life skills are currently understood, is that these are yet another subject to be studied or graded rather than ways of thinking and behaving that are intrinsic to many aspects of life. However, we then further question, are teachers prepared to teach these life skills? And though a lot more teachers as well as ITI trainers that we surveyed seem to know about life skills, that is almost close to 90%, there was still confusion with what and how to teach. For instance, close to 60% of both school teachers and ITI trainers agreed that life skills, soft skills, and moral education are the same thing. And I think we can all agree that sometimes, yes, those lines can be a little blur. But not only that, there's also lack of clarity on whether it should be a different type of subject or part of sports training or a co-curricular activity. and equally so about when to start teaching life skills. As you can see, something at primary level, some at upper primary, and a lot of people also think that much later in life this is something that should be introduced in schools at all. So now, as we push for an increased focus on life skills within the education curriculum, it is important to find ways to incorporate life skills education into regular everyday teaching, learning, and to ensure that life skills education is framed as a process of providing youth with a set of tools that can be used in any context, rather than as another subject that needs to be graded and assessed and just learned because there is a curriculum for it. The Voices 2023 data, which have just touched the sliver of a lot of things that we've done, it suggests that there are certainly urgent challenges for curriculum design, pedagogy, teacher training. But also, youth are not really clueless about the kinds of skills that they want to learn. I think the challenge for us then going ahead is to figure out how to experiment with school curriculum, to experiment with community values, to experiment with what youth themselves know and want to learn. So this is something that we again have to move forward with as we think about life skills and holistic and inclusive education. I think that's pretty much the end of it. Of course, there's the report, there's the dashboard, there's a lot of data, there's lots of interesting insights, hopefully, that you find interesting. So please go ahead and read those reports. Thank you.
So thank you, panelists. I think it was a very insightful discussion. I just wanted to start with a quick question that was coming to me. These are, of course, very important insights that we are gaining from the field. But say if I am a government or if I am an organization, how will this help me and how will I use this information? If some of you could please.
So, Anindya, quite like what Devleena was saying just now, a lot of these insights are from the young people themselves. So it clearly shows us what the need is, plus even the parents, and along with what they feel about life skills, it's also very clearly giving us the stages at which they're looking for this information, the youth themselves. And I think that's a very critical piece of conversation when we are talking to governments or even other partners, where we can say that, if we are going to create a curriculum, these are some of the requirements that has come out from the very set of people to whom these skills need to be imparted. And therefore, that's something that can lead the way towards that conversation. Also, a lot of these data, and like Snehal was also saying, you can go into the dashboard, slice and dice it the way you would like to see. If you're from a certain state or district, you can pick out just that kind of data. So similarly for any, having said that, it's not representative in the way that it is right now, but it gives a sense, a flavor of what the young people from that area are saying. And we've also made the tools public. So which also means that if you would like to maybe use the tools within that place to get a deeper understanding, that's another way in which, the next steps could look like in terms of a partnership with government, with any other organizations, etc.
No, I think just picking up from Pauline, when I was playing around with the dashboard, I was trying to see those who had access to a smartphone, or those who had news frequency was asked, how frequently do you read news? So those who were reading news frequently, does their score on critical thinking come up? Or those who had a bank account, does their score on problem solving, is it higher compared to those who don't? So I was just trying to test my own hypothesis and the gut feelings that we already have from our programs, from our experience. Is this coming out to be true in the survey that we have done or not? So just testing your own assumptions could be possible. We are not claiming that this is totally representative of the whole population. We are not saying that. These are district estimates. But at least these give us some idea. And definitely we have recommendations from teachers and ITI trainers of how they would tell us that this should life skills education should start from primary or upper primary, secondary. ITIs do have an employability skill curriculum and a subject as it is, but even the trainers are saying that it's too late. We should be starting very early within the school themselves, and the school teachers are telling us how they would want to see as a different subject or an integrated thing or what else. So I think those are the clues I would like to pick up if I was making those decisions.
I think both Pauline and Snehal have covered everything. The only addition that I'd like to make, so for me as a researcher also, when I was doing this, the most interesting part was that how we're thinking about life skills is something very individualistic and individual centric, whereas when you go into the community you realize that everyone, even the young people you speak with, are thinking about it as a community centric thing, that we have to stay with our family, we want to stay in the village, we want to do this here. And I think that shift in understanding that our approach is not something that might benefit them, because they are not looking for individual skills alone. Of course, those are equally important, but they would like to still stay with the family. So I think for organizations or researchers also who are trying to build anything on this, I think that should also perhaps figure in that you can't really do something for the individual as long as you don't, until you involve the community that they are a part of along with these individuals. So for me, that was an important takeaway from this.
So now I'll just open the floor to anyone. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot. Yes, please.
The rural and the urban.
No, so this was the entire survey as well as the focus group discussions was done in rural India. This was only rural India.
Is there any specific why it is only restricted to the rural? I'm just curious question.
So one of the main reasons, of course, was also just it was also just convenience, because all organizations that we work with primarily work with rural communities, and it was also something that we kind of want to focus on as well. But also the kind of insight or the kind of involvement that perhaps an urban Indian student would require when it comes to life skills is very different from the kind of engagement we do when we go to rural areas. And so right from the beginning, this was something done to keep the masses in mind, that this is not something we just want to restrict to cities, but then actually go down to like we said, voices from the ground. So go down and understand what the last person who doesn't have anything needs and how can we help them. In case you want to add something.
Just to add to that, also for us, like we had said in the first year, we were doing it in terms of convenience, where we had access to the different adolescent groups. And I think for the second round, we wanted to build on what we had got as information, rather than do the entire exercise completely, from scratch. And that also for us then became a driving factor to go back to those rural communities where we were and physically be able to go and meet some of these people, talk to them, spend a longer time than we could. I think our phone calls on survey were limited to 30 minutes, because we realized that the respondents, when we were doing phone surveys, that longer calls were actually exhausting them. So that was something that we also used as a learning, and therefore the second round looks the way it does.
First round was mostly during COVID, right?
Yes.
So second round actually gave the team much more, much better opportunity to actually go and
in addition to understanding the level of awareness, or when life skills should be introduced as a concept, is there a nuance to this whole study around gender, to say, is life skill different for a rural girl and her expectations or understanding of life skill as a subject, and probably what it could change for her in her life? is there a nuance to that, and are there insights that you want to, speak of with the audience?
So, again, to say that while we did a second round, first round learning informed that there are still challenges here. A lot of data you will see in terms of numbers doesn't show a major difference, but when we do go and talk to the people, like you would have heard in the morning panels also, there are differences in experience. However, we were not able to go into those very nuances and collect that difference. But maybe Devleena, you can add about some of the FGD bits. Sorry, I forgot the second part of your question. Insights, huh?
So in the survey, surprisingly, we didn't find any marked differences, just 1 or 2 percentages here and there with respect to how much the kind of respondents we got. But when we actually went to do the FGDs, we were doing it in boys groups and girls group, because obviously these are the kinds of conversations that you probably would not be comfortable having with the opposite gender in the same circle, because a lot of personal things came up ki ghar mein aisa hota hai, this is how our family is like, this is what we do. So yes, when we went to do these FGDs, there were remarkable gender insights. One of the major ones being that a lot of the rural girls who we spoke to, surprisingly, were already out of school. And this is just 18 to 22 age group. Actually, some were even younger, but they were already out of school. They all... the first thing you ask them is, what do you do? And they'll all say, we don't do anything. But they are busy the whole day. Because they're doing a whole lot of things. And you flip that question when a boys group, you ask them, okay, what do you do? They all have answers to this is what I do, this is what I do, but they have a lot more time. Because they're not really doing anything in the house. And that was one of the main differences that we found out, that the way one even thinks about work and what work we do and how we spend our day is so different when it comes to a girl and versus a boy. So it's just an example of the kind of insights that came up. And of course, there were this whole thing of negotiating with the family to allow us to do certain things came up in a big way in girls' FGDs. Whereas for boys, very interestingly, this didn't figure at all. And I remember being quite surprised also by the fact that every time we asked them, okay, do you want to stay in the village or do you want to go out? Girls would be the first ones to say, yes, we would like to go out, but we won't have the opportunity. So we'll try to convince our family and this and that. Boys were most happy to say, we'll stay here. We don't want to go. We'll probably go out and we'll do this and do that. And then we'll come back and we just want to stay in the village. So there were marked differences in the FGDs. Unfortunately, survey mode of research is not designed to bring out nuances. So hopefully as we go further down this research, we'll be able to bring out more nuances to the study.
Hi, my name is Maitri. Thank you. This was a fantastic panel. And it's really wonderful to see that you've gone into the community and got so many voices. But something that you presented also struck me as food for thought for any of us working in life skills, because you were talking about how the community itself does not have this perception of life skills. They name various things which could include cycling or cooking, but also maybe responsibility, caretaking of the family, etc. Right? So I was just wondering, then do we really need to rethink what are life skills itself? Because in some ways we are defining life skills and then we're saying, okay, this is what the community is saying, so this probably means responsibility, this probably means teamwork, this probably means that. And I'm also thinking in the context of, say, youth, especially from rural and marginalized communities that I work with, when unemployment is such a big thing and they're naming things like skills, technical skills or vocational skills as life skills for them, then do we as a group really need to rethink what do life skills mean? Just your insights on that.
So, I think that's a great question, because the fact that we are looking at as a collaborative also as life skills moving beyond to a holistic development is something where I think we do need to kind of, while, I mean, coming from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we know that employment is going to be one of the major factors. All of us are looking for money. We've said that in the morning panel as well. Paise chahiye, hame bhi chahiye. But the fact is that there are these other skills which are right now being called soft skills. And I think we are putting them a lower on priority the moment we start using terms like that. But I do understand that perhaps the way in which we verbalize these life skills maybe something we can revisit, because again, like our study also showed us that responsibility is not necessarily called responsibility by the people with whom we are talking. So it's for me personally, it's like a two-edged sword. Do we go to them with the definition? Do we develop the definition with them? And then what does it mean? And I think it could be a both way. It doesn't have to be either or. It could be both ways, but we definitely need to look at it even as a collaborative. That's one of our priorities, is to look at it beyond the academic, beyond the employability only as someone who is going to serve a purpose of being able to earn an income for themselves or the family, but for a person to be able to develop holistically for their own full potential, recognize it. Plus, we also in the morning spoke about how it's a life cycle requirement. It's not just a periodic requirement. So I think both those things perhaps are what we could build on and not make it either one way or the other. That's my understanding.
I think what you just mentioned, the whole collaborative itself, not just the voices group or track, the whole collaborative has been dealing with this question right from the beginning, I would say. The glossary is the main effort around that itself. How do we speak in the same language when somebody says problem solving or critical or digital literacy? What do I mean by digital literacy vis-a-vis what do you mean by that? What is financial literacy? All that. So first of all, so many people, so many CSOs are working in this field. Every state government is trying their own curriculum. There are own programs and projects. And how do we bring about, first of all, some consistency across, first in language, and then what reaches to a last mile student or the first mile student in Nagaland vis-a-vis Kerala, vis-a-vis Rajasthan. That kind of consistency, how does it become equitable and holistic? That is the so first the vocabulary, and then the meaning behind it, and then the actual efforts. How do we bring an alignment into it? I think your point was, if youth wants something else and we are talking about something else, what do we do and what choices do we make? I think the first step here is to first of all make that alignment of saying that, okay, this is whatever youth are saying, it actually fits into what we have been saying about this, and let's not confuse this with whatever other thing that we are trying to say. So first of all, clearing that whole vocabulary and making it consistent across the country, that's the first step the collaborative is trying to take. And then of course we will be dealing with the higher questions of what you just raised.
Excellent. Okay.
Put it across, Devleena. So my question is around, during this entire process of findings, did you also come across the metric to, it's a very heavy thing for me actually, a metric to see the impact of these life skills on individuals? Because this is so subjective and this is non-tangible, but this is the question that most of us keep asking us in this field of work. That is the first question. And the second one is to Pauline or Snehal. In the coming, I don't know, weeks, years, months, are you also going to do some findings on not the rural but the urban community or the individuals out there? Is that also on your to-do list by any chance?
On a personal wish list, yes, but
More work.
So I'll answer the first one. Did we? So honestly, we at this point did not have even the opportunity to see the impact of life skills because we were not going into like we were not really focusing to go into communities where there is any kind of program being run. We were picking up villages randomly from the list of villages that were already drawn from a random sample of 60 villages. So we would just randomly pick villages. In some villages, yes, okay, there's a program running, and in some villages, no. Of the few that we went to, I don't think we touched any where there was any life skills program or anything happening of that sort. So unfortunately, the impact of life skills, if at all there is that happening, that is something that that was beyond the scope of even what we had set out to do. So unfortunately, no, we didn't find that. But the little things that we could perhaps achieve was in those 1 or 2 hours that we were in those focus group discussions with young people, we were able to at least tell them that this is something that you're already doing. So for instance, I remember Karishma, my colleague here, who was doing an FGD with a boys group. She asked them, okay, can you tell me, how do you plan your day? And these boys would say, okay, we wake up at 5, then I go to the gym, then I do this, then I do that. And she's like, look, you're doing time management. So this is what is time management. And that we could see that there is perhaps a thought shift right then, that okay, this is not something that's completely unachievable. This is something, whatever we've spoken about is something that we can do, we can learn, and we're already doing it. I think the idea is to just bring awareness to the fact that you're doing this and this is something that you would like to do. I think we were just about able to achieve that much, and I think that was enough for the first round.
Yeah. Just to, on a light serious note, being dismissive. So the idea of having made the tools public is also that it shouldn't be limited to the 18 organizations of us who are able to collaborate. And if others, outside of the space would want to be able to access it to a similar kind of an analysis with other audiences, that's something that we definitely look forward to. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure yet, because as a collaborative team, we are trying to figure out what the next steps for us ourselves look like. So don't want to make a commitment on the group's behalf, but the tools are accessible. It's for the public consumption, the data is accessible. So like we were saying earlier as well, you can look at the data however you want from whichever cross-tabulation you'd like to do. But definitely feel free to use the tool in your own areas, see how it's working, whether it's in peri-urban, urban, rural areas. That's something that I think is open to everyone.